Hi everybody, my name is Matthew Poes with Poes Acoustics, and in this video I'm answering questions. So Percy Modi asks, would it make sense to install speakers dedicated for a home theater like the Ascendo in a living room instead of a traditional HiFi speaker, which I currently have, the Paradigm 800F? I'm looking to have a cinematic experience with high dynamics. So it's a good question, Percy, and the answer is of course it does. In fact, I would argue that the paradigms you have cannot create a cinematic experience simply because they cannot reach cinematic levels, reference levels. It's not about paradigm versus Ascendo. It's about a speaker's dynamic capabilities, its maximum output before compression and distortion rises too much. So reference levels, which I answer in other questions quite a bit, refers to 105 dB at the listening position from a single speaker. So what that means is the speaker has to be in its position. You turn the speaker volume control up to max volume. You send it a 0 dBu pink noise signal, probably a shaped pink noise signal. You should be getting 105 dB here. And if you measure at 70 dB and you compare the two, there has to be less than 3 dB of difference between the two in shape. And I believe it's based on 1/3 octave. So is that going to be true with those paradigms? It depends on your listening position. If your listening position is like 2 meters, maybe 3 meters, they might be able to do that. If you're at 4 meters, I don't think so. I'd be very surprised. And there's actually a way that RP22 kind of gives you the data, if you will, to do. So we can figure that out. So if we go and look up the paradigm, I'm not picking on you. This is how you do it. All right. So the Paradigm 800F there's a couple issues with what I'm about to do, but it's all we got, so we're going to go with it. They're rated at 92 dB sensitivity with 250 watts of power handling. Is that 92 dB sensitivity number correct? I'm going to guess it's not. It's probably not even close. Let's see if we can find data on it. So I'm going to go to, who might have this? Audioholics might, or Soundstage. I'm going to start with Soundstage. Sorry, Audioholics. And let's just see if they happen to have measured it. Oops. Sorry, you're getting a lot of silence while I look through things, but this is actually what you guys should do too. So you try to find something close that gives you the answer you want. So let's see, Paradigm, going flipping through their database here. Is the 800F something that they ever reviewed? Doesn't look like they did. All right, nope, all right. See if James ever reviewed it over at Audioholics. Oh yeah, should have gone there first. He reviewed the 800F. All right, so let's go to his measurements. He does a good job. He's very meticulous, and that's actually the key to the stuff being accurate. Here we go. So he measured 88.8. Oh, I was eyeballing it. I was not right. So 88.8. So we're going to go to 89. We're going to give you a little credit for that paradigm. So I'm going to use an app that lets you do anechoic propagation loss. That's what RP22 says to do. So it's 89 dB for one speaker. One speaker, 250 watts is all it can handle, so that's all we're going to give it for this because it is a continuous output test. And we're going to say for distance, 3.5 meters. That's 102 dB. Now, what would it take to hit 105? You'd have to give it 500 watts. If the speaker could sustain 500 watts for a short period of time, but long enough to constitute the length of a peak in a movie, then that speaker would do it at 3.5 meters. It also has to do it without 3 dB of compression, and this is just a theoretical test, so we don't know, because we've now actually exceeded what the speaker is rated for to come up with this. So I would guess that the paradigm in most living rooms with, like I said, around somewhere between 9 and 10 or 11 feet of listening distance excuse me, is going to struggle to hit reference levels. I really think to be comfortable with that speaker, yeah, 2.5 meters. So going back to feet, for those of you who prefer to use that, like 8 feet. So a listening distance of 8 feet or less, I think those speakers would hit reference levels. And if you use the center channel with it, I think you'd be good to go. If you're past 8 feet, if you're like 12 feet, they're going to be about 3 dB short. So I don't think that that speaker is going to work. On the other hand, the Ascendos absolutely are. So you might say, well, like, why doesn't Paradigm just make speakers like Ascendo does? Well, Paradigm makes a hi-fi speaker. It's designed to sound good as a hi-fi speaker, has wide bandwidth, relatively smooth frequency response. I think they're a little bright, but they're not bad. And they have pretty wide dispersion. The Ascendo speakers are a very different kind of speaker. They're using a coaxial driver for the most part. They are very limited bandwidth, and they are intended to be bass managed. They have to be used with subs. They're not pretty. They're not meant to be pretty. They're not meant to necessarily be on display. They're meant to be in a dedicated cinema. But if what you want is a cinematic experience in your living room, it's a great speaker, and that's, it's a great option for that. Could the Ascendo speakers be put in a pretty box? Yeah, they could be. But realistically, you could also do that to your living room. There's no reason why you can't, if this is important to you and this is what you want, there's no reason why you can't take those speakers and build a feature wall on the front that has your screen and puts those speakers up on the wall, for instance, and kind of builds them into a cabinet or something to hide them so that you don't see them. And then for the surrounds, you could build them into niches in the wall. You could build cabinets on the wall to hide them, whatever. I don't believe Ascendo makes in-wall speakers at the moment with these drivers. That of course could be an option too, but I don't think they have that. But so I think that to answer your question, would it make sense to do that? There's no reason why it wouldn't make sense to do that. There's nothing about the Ascendo speakers that makes them problematic to be used in a living room versus a theater room. It's just a wife acceptance factor thing, and I think that that's really on you at that point. So yeah, Paradigm, you buy them, you throw them in your room, they're beautiful, everybody's happy, no big deal. They give you that same but they're not going to experience because like we worked out, they're not going to hit reference levels. On the other hand, with the Ascendo speakers, there's going to be a lot more work involved to get to a point of high wife acceptance factor and even getting all the performance you want out of those. There's definitely more work to do that, but they will hit reference levels. They give you a better palette to work with for that purpose because they've got the extra not bandwidth, sorry, dynamic range. So once you get the EQing going, I generally find that they need it to be EQ'd to sound their best. That should be a part of it as calibration. And you hide them appropriately so that I guess you don't have to, but if that's important, you can end up with a very, very good result. So hopefully this is helpful and that you enjoyed this video. I apologize ahead of time to my wife who said, don't answer the questions out of order, but I missed this one.